What are Topre switches? This is your ultimate guide and review. Topre switches is probably something you've never heard of. They're so rare to see, whether in the workplace or in the gaming community, that you've likely never used one, seen one, or maybe even heard of one. Topre switches are great, and swapping them away can be awful. Hopefully, you'll find everything you need to know about these switches on this video. Topre switches are named after their original designer and manufacturer, which is a Japanese company by the same name. These switches were designed as an alternative to the standard mechanical switches. Some people love them, some people hate them, and some people feel so strongly about them. From my personal experience, there are some people who use them who can be a little elitist about them, which can be aggravating. Here are the differences between Topre mechanical switches and the standard ones. Topre switches are rounded and the top is connected to an electric circuit. This means that keystrokes are registered via electric currents directly, not from a switch being flicked. Keystrokes are registered via electrical currents supplied by sensors. The difference allows Topre switches to reset to their original resetting place more quickly and more smoothly. There is very little key bounce, and you don't realize just how much your keys bounce when you type, but they do. By removing the bounce, you can get into a smooth motion, as hitting certain keys harder doesn't necessarily result in them coming back up quicker or slower. Since we don't press all keys with equal force, this can be beneficial. Topre switches still use a spring, just as mechanical switches do, but instead of flicking the switch, the spring sits directly on top of the keyboard's PCB. Why this is so strange and problematic will be covered on later. All you need to know is that standard mechanical keyboard switches do not press directly onto the PCB the same way. Another difference is that Topre switches rely on their rubber level just as much as they do the spring. The spring is used to give the rubber a little more pushback. The spring also works far better at triggering the sensors. Force applied to a small area is more powerful than a wide one, which is why golf clubs have such a small head when in theory a bigger one would make it easier to hit. Why might someone want to use Topre switches? Topre switches are meant to make your typing more precise and comfortable. They don't spring back with as much force. Rather than that, they gently rise back into place. They have a relative high point of actuation compared to many standard switches, and they feel differently compared to standard keyboards, which can be quite hard to describe. The kind of person who would use these switches is someone who is looking for fast response time when typing. If you're trying to hit a high word count per minute when writing, these keyboards might be what you are looking for. What do Topre switches feel like? It feels like you're pressing your fingers into a rubber dome rather than a hard, flat, or curved down surface. That's because they have a rubber dome inside of them as well as a spring, which helps remove the unwanted mush feel that you get from a standard membrane keyboard. The rubber dome can be adjusted depending on the desired tactile feel. Topre switches bump up towards your finger in some cases. It can feel strange to the touch at first. When typing, you don't typically have something pushing back at you. Force is very one way. Topre is slightly different in this regard. They're also light to the touch. There's not much weight behind them. They're easy to use, and some people don't like how easy to use they are, as it feels like they're almost not doing anything. Conversely, some people feel that they are more reactive and tactile due to their rounded shape and quick, smooth spring back. So depending on if you are a heavy-handed typer or you type with a light touch, this will determine what spring force is best for you. Overall, I think the switch is smooth and enjoyable to type. The question is this increased experience worth the price point? Well, that's debatable. Some people don't even like the way Topre switches feel, much less want to pay extra for them. The sound of a Topre switch is like one of the main reasons why people buy them. They have sort of a click sound, yet they're less springy and metallic, like what you get from a cherry switch. The sound is crisper and not so harsh. Describing a sound doesn't quite do it justice. I will scour the tubes for some videos of different Torp switches and embed them into the article. So check the description box below to find the article. Are Topre switches tactile? Yes, they are. Tactile means there's a sense of touch, and Topre switches excel best at giving you that. You'll feel each key press very quickly, yet the feeling is subtle. That's because when you're typing, the feeling of each key being pressed and then springing back up is not meant to be a conscious thought. It is a background feeling that helps your muscle memory kick in. So the best way to describe the tactileness of Topre switches is that they make typing feel effortless. Standard mechanical switches are like driving sticks, and Topre ones are like upgrading to an automatic. The principles are still the same, it's just easier, it just feels better. Are Topre switches worth using? In my opinion, it's great. I'll stop going over how weird they feel because weird is subjective. But that said, whether or not they're worth it depends on their feel. So some people love them so much that they never want to go back. And anything other than Topre switches feels old, slow, and uncomfortable. Some people swear off them almost immediately. The only way you'll know for sure whether they're worth using for you is by giving them a try. But here's the problem, they're not cheap. They're quite expensive, and the biggest hurdle for getting people to use these switches is actually the price point. But if they were more affordable, more people can see how good they are. Are Topre switches worth using? Yes, they are worth using if you're willing to spend the dollars to give them a try, and you pay for what you get. So whether or not you're willing to risk them is up to you. But another problem is that you simply can't swap out your pre-existing switches for a Topre one. Can I put Topre switches in myself? No, you can't put Topre switches in yourself, even though you're pretty nifty with your hands and you truly know your way around a keyboard. You won't be able to make the switch. So the reason is that they require a direct connection to the PCB. The PCB is the printed circuit board, which is what sends the keystroke signals to the computer so it can register your keystrokes. So ordinarily, a mechanical keyboard will have switches that hit levers that hit the PCB. A Topre switch connects directly to the PCB. You can't simply swap out a switch. You would need to swap out the entire circuit board. So that's not feasible because the circuit board you have likely isn't the right size or shape to fit Topre switches. Are Topre switches good for someone with carpal tunnel syndrome? Yes, they are. Or if you have any other wrist mobility and flexibility issues, this Topre switch is great for you. They are easy to use, and that's a bonus when typing can be painful. They also have a high point of actuation with a low pressure threshold, which requires less movement from your hands, and the keys spring back up evenly and smoothly, even though there are fewer micro adjustments to be made, but overall it's great. So these adjustments are not a conscious decision that you make. They're your brain circulating where the key is and how hard you need to press. People with arthritis are always feeling aches and pains, so these micro adjustments are more prominent. These calculations that our brain makes are completely autonomous. So sure, we track the ball, and so it's similar to how we catch a ball, but the actual mathematics of how much we move is all subconscious and powered almost entirely by muscle memory. Now, what are the best Topre keyboards? Topre keyboards are not cheap, and some companies might try to pass off regular keyboards as Topre keyboards. So they may not be the cheapest, but they're certainly the highest quality. Since Topre switches are more on the expensive side, why not fully commit and get some good ones? So here are 3 keyboards which would serve you well. Number 1 is the Topre RealForce 104UB. It's one of the best RealForce models on the market, and it's a great all-around keyboard. It has non-contact electrostatic set of switches, meaning they're incredibly receptive to the touch. The switch hardly moves at all, and this means that your fingers hardly need to move when you're pressing each key. This keyboard comes in black as standard, but can be customized somewhat if you're happy to do so yourself. It's possible to paint the frame so long as you don't take it apart. Putting this keyboard back together is a nightmare though. So this keyboard also has individual weighted keys. It means that the keys are harder to reach and they're generally hit with less force required to register than the key that has been pressed. Every single key has been given it specific weighting, and another reason why you shouldn't take it apart. The hardest keys to reach are just needs 15 grams of pressure, which is almost none, so it's very, very light. So this keyboard has a long lifespan of about 30 million keystrokes, which is quite common, but with Topre keyboards, it's less common. It's a full-size keyboard with 13 programmable function keys, and you're getting as much functionality as with any other keyboard, but with more comfort and ease of use. Number 2 is the Happy Hacking Keyboard Professional 2. Honestly, it's one of my favorites. It stays true to its Japanese roots, and this keyboard is only an 80% keyboard. It opted to remove its numpad in favor of being more portable and sleeker looking, and it looks good too. This keyboard makes use of the same capacitive switches, so it's equally as sensitive and easy to use as the RealForce. This keyboard has a smooth matte smoky gray finish, and it looks quite smart and professional, which is perfect for an office setting. It may be called Happy Hacking Keyboard, but it can be used for anything from gaming to programming, and it's designed to be as compatible with whatever accessories you need. It has 2 USB ports, so you can plug in a USB key or mouse, and it's ideal if you're working remotely, especially when traveling. It also has blank keycaps, which isn't everyone's cup of tea, but it's pretty cool, and it adds to the sleek finish. So if you know how to touch type, that should not be a problem. Number 3 is the Seasonic Topre Keyboard RealForce RGB. This one's a gaming keyboard, and it may not be marketed as one, but like so many RGB keyboards, this is where it shines. It has capacitive keys, making it very light to touch, and it has a feature that's very rare in keyboards to start with. It gives you the option to change the point of activation. So this is perfect for picky typists and people suffering from mobility and dexterity issues. The Seasonic also has a changeable RGB backlight, meaning you can assign different colors to different keys or change the keyboard to change colors. It has a full set of customizable function keys, and which means that it can be used even for the most complex programming tasks. As keyboards go, this one does it all, and if I had to pick one, it would be this. This keyboard comes from a company that backs themselves as they offer a 3-year warranty, and you can expect nothing but the best when you go for this. So they claim that this keyboard is 25% faster to type on than any of its competitors, but This keyboard won't make a bad typist good, but it could make a good one great. So in conclusion, hopefully this article answered any of your questions about Topre switches and Topre keyboards. They're quite rare to see, but they're a very useful invention. Aside from that, they make people more efficient and more comfortable typists, which reduces the risk of injury. In theory, it would make sense from a business perspective to use them. And the reason they aren't is because of the cost factor. Supplying the entire office is not cheap. If you're like me, any keyboard you buy needs to work well for general day-to-day tasks, but most importantly needs to work well for gaming. This kind of keyboard works well for gaming because it improves reaction time and stroke speed. If you take a combo-based game such as League of Legends, then being able to get your combo off 25% faster, you are putting yourself in a great position of strength. So a better keyboard is no different. Any of the above keyboards would be great for any purpose you might have for them. And my recommendation if you are a gamer would be Seasonic. So check out keyboardkings.com for more guides and reviews. Go to my website keyboardkings.com, and a link to this article will be in the description box below.